Welcome to Grief Uprooted, a podcast dedicated to sharing your grief stories. Together, we embark on the mystery of one's grief journey as they learn to live, heal, and be courageous in a world rooted in trauma. Join myself, Christine, in an open discussion to help you uproot the grief in all our lives. I am an award winning author, professional speaker, and humanitarian in the field of grief and trauma. I want you to be part of the discussion. Welcome back to Grief Uprooted. I'm your host, Christine de Nederlanden. I'm simply amazed at how far Grief Uprooted reaches. Today's guest is coming and tuning in from South Africa. We've had people from Europe, all over Europe, across the world tune in, be our guests. It really shows you how grief is worldwide, how it is the only thing in life that does not discriminate. We will all experience grief at one time in our lives. My guest today, Heather Reen, our connection and how we came together was simply by a photo of her daughter, Jace. And this photo touched me. And not knowing that the little girl in the picture had actually died. She looked just like me. And that's what drawn me to it. And she was smiling and happy. And when I read that she had passed, I needed to reach out to Heather. I needed to know what brought her to a place of healing. So today's episode, we really explore what happens when we verbally can't talk about our grief. And Heather's story, it's an actual fact. She couldn't talk about her grief. And she shares the most amazing journey that I've ever witnessed. She takes us to a place of acceptance. And this is a choice for her. And then she takes us on a journey called SoulCollage. Simply amazing. I think this episode really shows us that we don't have a choice with grief, that horrific things happen to us and they impact us greatly. And it feels like our lives are out of control. But then after the grief, through that process, there is a choice. We do have choices. And what exactly are they? Join me today on Talking to Heather. It was one episode that I have to say hit me hard. And I do apologize for the glitches. Our connection kind of went in and out. So I tried my best to continue on with the story. So I hope that it fully comes through for you. But yeah, sometimes doing Grief Uprooted makes me speechless, which is a rarity. Let's go meet Heather. Thanks, guys. Welcome back to Grief Uprooted. Today I have a guest from South Africa. Is that where you're from, Heather?
It is.
And I can't believe how far grief reaches out. Like we often just think, oh, it's only in our lives or only in this area. I'm so excited to have you here today. And you really, I just kind of want to share with all of you out there, my listeners, that the way I reached out to Heather was simply by a picture of her daughter. It's rare to see somebody with red hair, and she just had the biggest smile on her face. And that picture drew me to you immediately. And I wanted to learn everything I could about her. And to learn that in that picture, when I read the caption, that she had died, That hit me. That hit me so hard. And I think it's great that we're sharing all this stuff on social media because it makes you realize that, you're not alone in your grief. So of course I had to find Heather. I had to figure out all that stuff. So I'm so excited that you have agreed to this. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Um, and what I really love to start with is when did grief first impact your life? And what was life like before it impacted your life?
Okay, so this is something that I've given a bit of thought to because I think my simple answer would have been grief impacted my life in 2016 when I lost Jessie, my daughter.
Hmm.
But actually, I've had some time to think back and to kind of reflect for myself, when did grief first impact my life and in what way? And actually, my first real devastating experience of grief was when I got divorced.
What?
And that was in 2014. And prior to that, actually, as a kid, if I think about it, it wasn't, I don't remember losing grandparents and I don't remember those being a massive impact. I remember my very best friends, more than one of them, when I was a little girl, immigrating and leaving the country. And these were my closest girlfriends, and they were gone. They weren't dead, they were still alive, but they'd moved away.
Yeah.
And if I reflect back, that was probably my very first experience.
Oh, hopefully this,
Then,
there we go. Sorry, you
are you
froze.
okay?
But that's okay because you're coming from South Africa and I'm in Ontario, Canada. So you froze there a bit. So
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. So your girlfriends, they had moved away and that was a grief and divorce was a grief.
100%. Yeah. I remember after I got divorced, it was a decision that I'd chosen, I'd made. I knew it was the right decision, but I remember just the waves of emotion that came afterwards and thinking to myself, what the hell is this? Like, and when is it going to end? Because this is so overwhelming and it's so much and it's so sore. And yeah, I think that was my first tangible heartbreaking experience of grief, and but also learning the very very important lesson that the only way for us to get through our feelings.
Hmm.
um and and it was a lesson that I really needed come 2016 and the years that followed that, because it's kind of one of those tools that I've had in my toolkits that I've remembered and I've held on to, and when the feelings come, and they do, I remind myself that this is going to pass. But the best way to go through it is, or the best way to get through it is to allow yourself to go through it. And that's been a huge, I suppose it's been a huge strength, actually. We see emotion as, oh my gosh, I'm so weak and so vulnerable and so feeble. And actually, no, it's embracing and it's realizing that when I let myself feel this, that's where healing happens. And that's where I'm allowing myself to get better.
And
It's not comfortable, but
yeah, and just to interject in there, I use a pin
mm,
and I often reference it as the pin, you're the center of the pinwheel, and each point of the pinwheel is an emotion. And some days when the wind comes, you're spinning. You're just constantly going. Your pinwheel is moving and moving and moving. And then some days it just stops on an emotion and you feel that. But I think you're
mm,
so right. Those experiences earlier, um, you may have not identified them as grief, but they are. And so
mm,
many times we look at grief and go, well, it's just death. Well, no, these experiences you had were grief. And
yeah.
usually between I've been doing a lot of inner child work. A lot of people talk about that and been exploring that with some clients and myself. And I realized that between that 6 to 9 and where all these beliefs were created, um, all that comes back and that those beliefs and tools teach you how to handle these type of things. So, that divorce and those people moving, had you known, right? Had you known.
Yeah.
That's so then what happens after, like once your divorce settled and where does that go?
So yeah, it was a process, and it was probably the first time that I learned to embrace. And I mean, I remember doing an exercise at the time. Somebody had said to me, the best way to unpack your feelings is to close your eyes and imagine what color they are, what texture they are, what do they taste like, what do they smell like. And I was so desperate. I was so desperate to stop feeling the way I was feeling that I was like, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
And I remember that exercise being so, so beneficial and helpful to me. Um, it hurt like hell, but there was something about putting it into words. And it wasn't about labeling it and going, I feel sad, I feel devastated. It was the color of this is, it looks and feels like sandpaper and it's rubbing up against me and it's scratchy and irritable and
Yeah.
yucky, and it was just giving myself words for these feelings that I couldn't quite understand or describe. Um, and and yeah, and looking back, realizing that they passed, and I got through it. And um, yeah, and then obviously, the next big grief experience was in 2016, and it was this head-on collision, turn my life upside down experience. And losing somebody close to me. I'd always kind of had this. I don't think this is something I could ever deal with or cope with. How do you cope?
Mm.
I had no idea, and and then it happened, and I didn't just lose Jace. I lost my partner at the time as well. Um, and there were so many losses kind of attached to that accident. Um, and actually, if I look back, my grieving experience was gentle. I don't know how else to put it. It was, yeah, I can't explain it to you because it was so different to what I thought it would be like. And it's so different to probably many other people's experiences of it.
So
But
let me take you back to um, that day when this accident happened. Um, so just we can gain an understanding of what took place. So where were you and kind of what happened? So you obviously found a new partner. That's lovely.
I did, yes, I skipped that part of the story.
That's
Yeah,
a
I
good
did. I
part.
started dating somebody, I think in 2015. Yeah, Clint and I started dating. So we'd been together just over a year when we had our accident.
And were you like just driving down the road? Like what happened?
Okay, so yeah, we'd been away for the weekend. It was myself, Clint, and my two girls. My oldest daughter is Tyler, and my youngest is Jace.
Jeez.
And we were driving back to Durban from this weekend away. Um, and Clint used to drive this big double cab. In South Africa, we call it a bakkie. It's like a truck. I don't know what you, yeah.
Yeah, big truck. Oh, I hope you come back. I apologize, everybody. It keeps freezing on us. Oh, please come back.
Then there was a woman and her son who were
Oh, you're
driving
gonna
in the,
have to repeat it. You froze on me.
oh,
We stopped.
sherbet.
That's okay. We stopped at
I
the.
don't know if I should. I don't know if I should move because I mean, I've got full signal. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I
Okay,
spoke while you froze. So you were in the Bucky, and then what happened?
okay, yes, okay. So you know what a bakkie is?
Big truck. That's what we call
Yes, a big truck.
it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, driving back, and we were on a portion of road where there was no barrier between the cars coming towards us. It was a big highway. Um, And I don't remember anything, but from what I've been told, there was a woman and her son who were driving in the opposite direction to us, and she lost control of her car. And
Mm.
so her car came across directly into us. Um, and yeah, it was a proper head-on collision. And actually, out of all the people involved in that collision, only myself and Tyler survived. Um, Jess died instantly in the accident. She broke her neck. and Clint suffered serious. He'd crushed his chest. He was driving at the time, um, and they had to resuscitate him 3 times between the site of the accident and the hospital, and he died shortly after getting to the hospital. And the woman and her son who crashed into us, they both died instantly as well. So yeah, that's what I've been told happened. And it's a complete miracle that I'm here today. And it's a miracle that Tyler's here today. Um,
Say you were told. Were you out? Is that why you're saying you were told?
so yes, I bashed my head in the accident. And so I've got absolutely no recollection still to this day. I don't have flashbacks. I don't remember seeing the car.
Wow.
My daughter Tyler remembers a lot more. But I don't remember anything. So yeah, I'd hit my head really hard. I had a traumatic brain injury, and I smashed both of my feet. I broke my sacrum. I had a lot of internal injuries, and basically, they'd got us to hospital and try to get hold of as much family as they could, and just said, "You guys need to get here as soon as you can." Um, they didn't think that.
Oh. They didn't think that you were going to survive.
No, no, they absolutely didn't. And and yeah, I was put into a coma, and I stayed in a coma for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Um, and I've got no conscious memory of that time. But I do have kind of bits and pieces of memory from when my ex-husband and my mom and my dad came to tell me about losing Jason Clint. Um, and again, it apparently I did all the right things in terms of, the tears poured out of my eyes. Um, but from what I remember, there was, and I can't explain that to you.
Go
Um,
back because
and it was then kind of this,
you
there
tapped
was so
out.
much.
You tapped out when you said you all I heard was I couldn't explain that to you. What happened? I feel like that was a pivotal thing.
So there there was there was a sense of peace.
Hmm.
There was this. I understood that Jess was gone. I understood that Clint was gone,
Yeah.
and I cried. It was like my soul was leaking out of my eyes.
Yeah.
And that happened for a long time. But there, yeah, there was peace, and
I got that.
peace that I can't explain. Yeah. Um, and then I remember I was in hospital for a long time, for almost 3 months. And there's a lot that I don't remember from that time. My head injury obviously impacted on my memory a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but there are certain very vivid memories from when I was still in hospital. Um, and also just I remember every morning. I remember every morning I would lie in bed and the tears would just flow. And the nurses would come to me and go, "What's wrong, my darling?" And I'd go, "I lost my little girl. My little girl's not with me anymore." Um, and then I would kind of get, I mean, I was in a wheelchair for a long time, but I would then get ready for the day and I would go and eat breakfast and the visitors would come, and I had visitors all the time. I had people around me from the very, very beginning. Um, and I would be present. I would be engaging and I'd be happy to see people. And I would go to the physio and to the psychologist and to all the many different people who were there to help me get better. And um, and then by the end of the day, when I was on my own again, I would leak again, and the tears would come.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's like I grieved in pockets. My grief happened in these little pockets, I feel grateful for that because that was what I needed. I don't think I would have gotten better as well as I did if I wasn't able to kind of, yeah, just have these little
Yeah.
pockets. Yeah, I love pockets. I don't know if that pockets is the right word, but that's what I call it.
Well, in yeah, my tears roll all the time. I always would come home after eating and I would tell my children because they would say, "Oh, you're crying, but I'm talking." And I'm like, "Oh, my soul hurts." And they're like,
Mm,
"Oh." And I'm like, I work with people who are grieving, so they share their stories with me and that I have this empathy and my soul
mm,
starts to hurt. And when you talk about pockets, it reminds me of emotional denial. Um, a lot of times people fall. I use a jar and I put a little red, I put Annie in the jar because she looks like me. And when I have
yeah.
kids, I put Annie in the jar and I close the jar. And I say emotional denial is like a protecting mechanism for your brain. It's like,
Mm,
when my brother um, had fallen over Niagara Falls Gorge, it was like I couldn't compute it. So it
mm,
was like, here's a little bit of information, and then it went away. Here's a little more information, and then it went away. And I thought, it's amazing how your mind and body and soul go. We're only going to give you what you can handle. I wonder if that's where that phrase came from, right? Where they say, you're only going to get what you can handle. So it was like, I totally understand that pocket. And I'm sure
mm,
everybody listening understands that pocket theory where it's just a little bit
yeah.
and you're processing. So when do we get out of the hospital? And like, is everything working?
No. So I got out of the hospital. My accident was on the 9th of October in 2016, and I got out of hospital on the 28th of December in 2016. Um, and wow, no, not everything was working. I was still in a wheelchair. We'd had to have this meeting at the hospital where they'd said to me, Heather, you're not going to be able to live independently when you get out of hospital.
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember arguing. I
Wow.
was sitting there with brain damage and a wheelchair going, no, 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 I'm going to be fine. Please let me go home. I don't want to go live with anybody else. There was
Yeah.
what my accident showed me and what this whole experience has shown me is that, we can be battered and broken and bruised, and there's still that part of ourselves inside that's fighting.
Mm,
And that was the part going, I'm still here and I still want to live on my own and I still want to do things for myself.
yeah.
Um, and actually, I mean, what the big lesson, the massive, most important lesson that I learned while I was in hospital was I've got to ask for help. I've got to be okay with asking for help. I cannot do this on my own. And and yeah, that came in the form of every time I had wanted to go to the bathroom, I had to push a button for a nurse to come and take me to the bathroom to pee. I could do nothing for myself. And
Mm,
so that very strong self-reliance got smashed. And it was something that needed to be smashed because I've needed a lot of help and I've been able to ask because I've realized that I'm so much stronger when I'm willing to ask for help.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I fought, but I was very quickly silenced, and everyone told me, Heather, it's going to be okay, but you're gonna need to learn to be taken care of for a little bit. And I remember going, okay,
Yeah.
okay. There was a lot of acceptance. Like, yes, there was fighting, but there was the acceptance seemed to follow quite quickly. Yeah, it, I believe for myself, acceptance was a choice. And I remember that when I was in hospital, I was lying there one morning also crying, but I felt like I needed to have a really quite a serious conversation with,
Yeah.
I'll call him God, like my higher power, whatever
Yeah.
we all believe our own thing, Um, but I remember lying there and going, okay, God, this has happened, and this is really pretty shitty, and I actually don't like it. But I can accept. I can actually accept that Jess and Clint's time here was done. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't that way. I wish they were still here. I miss them terribly, but I accept that this is the way that it was meant to be for some reason or another. Um, but I had a big but. Um, I said, but I can't let this can't be for nothing. I need good things to come out of this, and I don't mind what that looks like. I'm here to, be a vessel for that. You can do most of the work because you're better at it than I am. Um, but I need good things to come from this.
I want
And
to touch on your acceptance because that is something that my listeners consistently reach out and say, how do I get to acceptance? How do I? And it seems like you were able to rephrase it as a choice. And I like to use integration, that grief, and it feels like with the divorce and your earlier parts in life, you were able to integrate it and go, this is a part of life. Like, I don't understand why I feel so shitty with this divorce, but this is a part of life and it integrates. And then
yeah,
when you had this tragedy, I love to use grief to growth. And
mm.
I struggle with that because when I'm hearing your story, I think, fuck me, mind my sorry, but
No,
geez,
please.
like how in the hell? Like, how is this woman gonna grow from this crap? But then I see you, and that's why sometimes I play with all these different words in my head, going, what's the best way to bring grief to people? Because they don't want to talk about it. And when you put grief and growth together, they're two opposite parallels. But when
Yeah,
I watch you and I see all that's taken place, at the end, you're like, I have to accept that other people can help me. And
mm,
I'm determined good would come out of this.
mm,
So it's kind of like unwanted growth, but it's going to happen. And you are capable of going, this is a choice acceptance, where I don't think a lot of people look at it that way. A lot of people look at it like, when am I going to get there? Where you are able
yeah,
to go, I have a choice, and it's either to accept or to not.
yeah.
And that's miraculous.
So, okay, so there's a few things that have played into that for me. First of all, I think logically, I think I'm a very logical person, and so my logic kicked in at that point, and it was like there is nothing that I can do to change this.
Yeah.
Fuck all. Doesn't matter what I do, there is nothing I can do to change this. I'm either going to sit in resistance of it and cause myself a shit ton more pain,
Yeah.
or I'm going to choose to accept that this has happened. Acceptance doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that I'm okay with it or that I'm going, yay, this is fabulous. No,
Yeah.
it's just going, this has happened.
Yeah.
I can't change it. I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn to live with this.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think for me that the motivator to choose acceptance, it came long before my accident ever happened. And
Mm,
it came from actually um, the book of the book of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, I'll just throw that in there. The book of AA has got a passage about acceptance, and it says acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. And there's this whole passage, and it talks about living in resistance to what is, and how my level of serenity is directly proportionate to my level of acceptance.
yeah.
And I had been taught this over and over and over again because I'd been in recovery for, I think, 4 years at the time of my accident. And I'd had it drilled into me, but I'd experienced the peace that comes when I live in acceptance and when I choose that.
Yeah.
Um, and so it felt like an easy choice almost. I mean, this was on a massive scale, and again, I'm going to just reiterate, it doesn't take away the feelings, it doesn't take away the need to grieve,
Yeah.
but it definitely gave me a sense of peace. And when I accept, then I'm able to go, okay, how what are things going to look like now moving forward,
Yeah.
um
And I think
so
acceptance gives you this huge moment of release. Like it
Mm.
allows you to say, you know what? I accept this. I understand the reality of the situation. And now it feels like I've been released to just let it go. It feels
Yeah.
like a huge bunch of bricks are coming off. We're just going to go for a quick break because I want to come back, and I know that this episode has been in and out, and so
Yeah,
we're going to
sorry.
come back. No, that's okay because I can hear my dog barking in the back too, and we're going to
Okay.
do a mini little recap, and then we're going to go into the second part. So we will be right back. Dying to Live, Learning to Live a Full Life from Your Lived Experiences is a self-help book, but it's a DIY self-help book. It's a book for those who have a story to share and a journey to explore. In this book, not only are you reading, you're going to be asked in every chapter to do an activity. You're going to be asked to move your body, be creative, and explore your grief. Your perceptions are going to be challenged. Your integration of your grief will be challenged, and you will be able to explore your grief all in one book. It's not just sitting and listening or reading someone else's story. It's actually for you to go hands on with your grief, to really start to write your story out, to explore your journey. This could lead to your first book. This could lead to you being so creative with your grief that you started your whole new business. Here on Grief Uprooted, I've seen that. I've seen people take their grief journey, become grief coaches, become grief counselors, become authors, become business owners, become nonprofit founders. So many things are possible with your grief. And dying to live, learning to live from your lived experiences and learning to live a full life from those lived experiences is your DIY book for that. It will help you explore and understand and come to accept and integrate your grief so that your life will be more fulfilled and the life that you're meant to live. You can get Dying to Live at Amazon.ca or robertspress.com. Okay, so just to kind of do a recap, um, you've experienced the divorce, the losing of friends at a young age. You did tap into alcohol there. And was that between the divorce and when you had the horrific accident that took Chase, your daughter? And was his name Clint? Your
Clint. Yeah. Clint.
yes, your newfound love. Um, how like what was the alcohol? Was that from the divorce to the accident? Is that just something that fell
No,
in there?
it was before the divorce. It was
Wow.
before the divorce, and so I came into recovery in 2012. Um, and yeah, I mean, drinking was a big part of my and my ex-husband's lives.
Okay.
I always thought he had a drinking problem. Um, but in retrospect, I spent a lot of time blaming him, and actually my life was busy falling apart.
Yeah.
Um, and and I had a problem. And it got to the point where so my ex-husband's name is Guy, and Guy said to me, um, it got to the point where he said to me, "You'll be lucky to get visitation with the girls." We were still obviously married at the time, and I'd had another big bender and behaved like a complete lunatic. And I'd actually come home and told him, and he said to me, "I can't do this anymore." But he threatened to take the children away from me. And I remember saying to him then, "Guy, I promise you, I will never drink again." And
Wow.
I had no idea how the hell that was going to work out. But I then landed up going to an AA meeting, my very first one, and I haven't had a drink since then. And obviously, that's been its own whole process and journey in itself. Um, but yeah, the point is that alcohol and me acting out with men. There was a lot to my addictive behavior. Um, and recovery has played such a massive part in my life and in my journey and in my healing and in being able to deal
Yeah.
with massive loss and change and grief.
I think that's amazing. And the one reason I kind of wanted to touch on that is because in the last later part of my career, um, I've worked with addictions and I never saw grief and addictions. And
Hmm.
so when my friend said, "Would you come and work in this home?" and they were having and it was for recovering alcoholics and drug use and all this stuff. And I was like, "I don't work in addictions." And then she laughed at me and she's like, "Where do you go after you do a presentation and stuff?" "Oh, yeah, I like a good beer, maybe a couple." And then I started going, "Oh." And then when I started to work in addictions in the grief sector, what I found fascinating is when one of the counselors really challenged me. And I said, "What do you?" I go, "I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink." And he goes, "Really? How many motorcycles do you own?" And I went, "What are you talking about?" And
Hmm.
that's when I thought, "Oh my God, I'm an extremist." He goes,
Hmm.
"Yeah." He goes, "You love to test life." And I thought, that makes complete sense considering what I do for a living. But I never realized that, yeah, I'm like, yeah, maybe I should slow up on the motorcycles, right? Like, how much do I really need? But yeah, it's interesting how that really that shines a light on what's going on in your life. And I didn't realize how many people had experienced a form of grief and that's why they were driven to that addiction. So
Hmm.
I applaud you because I've often thought, man, if we could come up with 12 steps to healing grief, would that not
Yeah.
be the best thing ever? Because, it's amazing when you see people and you're a beautiful human being. So where do we go with like all of this grief and all that's happening? Take me to like the next part of your life because you're obviously gone somewhere great because you're fantastic. So
Um, okay, so are you asking me what happens after hospital, et cetera, et cetera? How
yeah,
does it all unfold?
yeah,
Okay. So yeah, it's been a process. My gosh, it's been a process. And I love looking back because um I think what's so significant for me is that yes, I set that intention when I was in hospital, not having a clue how it was all going to pan out, but knowing that it was all going to unfold as it needed to. And I can look back and I can see how the right people and the right doctors and the right, like they've just been the right people along the way who've been brought into my life, and that includes I lived with a friend for almost a year after my accident. And I was in a wheelchair for about at least 6 months. I had to have operations. My head injury, that was like a whole nother world. I was very, it has a huge impact on who you are and how you are. And I was completely unfiltered. I mean, you think I'm unfiltered now. I was like,
mhm,
whatever came into my head came out of my mouth. And I was just, it was very freeing. It was a very, very honest
yeah.
time. Um, but, but yeah, there was so much to kind of, um, heal. And, um, yeah, I lived with a friend, as I say, for a year, and I remember the kind of significant things along the way. I was seeing a neuropsychologist because I had a head injury, um, and she is the one who introduced me to SoulCollage as part of my therapy and as part of my healing journey, and it was phenomenal because the first SoulCollage card I ever made. I was still in a wheelchair. My head injury in the beginning meant that I couldn't find my words very well. Um, and so I felt like, who the hell am I and where have I gone and what on earth is actually left of me?
Mhm.
And I remember then doing this, my first soul collage, and the picture that I stuck on this card was of this. woman who looked like a warrior. And the insights that came out of this card were just like, you're a fighter, Heather, and there's so much more for you to do in this life, and there was something about love. There was something about loving fully. And I remember looking at this card and looking at myself and going, how do these marry up? And it was kind of just this reminder that yes, my body was broken and my brain was damaged and my heart was completely crushed, but that warrior woman inside of me was still very intact. Um and yeah, and I think that's what Soul Collage has given me throughout my journey. Has just it kind of gives a voice to those parts of us that we don't even know are there, but that are fighting on our behalf. Um,
And so
yeah.
you were introduced to this, and it's so connects with grief because everybody feels like that.
Mm,
I don't have the words. I don't know
mm,
what to say. You
yeah.
are, I have no idea how this connection came, but I got to tell you, I'm controlling my tears. And I know I cry a lot, but I believe crying is good for you. But on my necklace, I just got it last week and it says warrior. And
Oh wow.
and so I love that you're using that word because um I feel like we need that. I feel like that's in us when we were young and it's so great that this person or doctor found something
Mm,
that if you couldn't verbalize it, you were going to tangibly use your hands and pictures. Um,
mm.
so where does this all lead? Because like I'm so curious about this wolf that I see often on
Oh
what you
yeah.
you do. And so tell everybody where this all leads, because I think this is just simply an amazing story um, of how you were able to do all this and such a value to my listeners. So pay attention. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I first of all, Soul Collage was created actually in California by a family therapist called Sienna Frost. And I think she created it about 20 years ago. Um, and it is now a worldwide practice.
Yeah.
And so a lot of therapists use it. Um, but it's all about tapping into the power of images and how images connect to a different part of our brain than words do.
Mhm.
And you've just said it. It's images take away the need for words. And so, yeah, Sienna Frost had kind of realized this in her family therapy and had come up with this concept of soul collage, which, yeah, is now a worldwide practice, as I say. Um, and what had happened with my doctor, she'd eventually, I'd done individual soul collage, I'd done soul collage, um, in honor of Jess and in honor of my little girl. It was about a year after my accident, and I put together a card in honor of Jess, and it was amazing because I'm sorry, I don't have that one with me. I'll show you another one that I do have with me. But
Oh, great.
um, yeah, this card, if you look at it, you would never say that it represents an 8-year-old little girl,
Yeah.
but it so spoke to who Jess was and to how big Jess is. And there was just so much reassurance that came from that, and it was just this sense of, Mom, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. And I'm always with you. And that has very much been my experience and my truth. So um yeah, soul collage can be so helpful. I use it with grief coaching clients as well because again it's a way of connecting to your loss, connecting to who are you now, connecting to the fact that that person who you loved and lost is a part of you, and it's giving words to that. So yeah, it's been phenomenal, and I now host soul collage workshops. I do soul collage in my grief coaching practice, but I do it with groups of people where I live here now. And it's amazing because I've been doing it for many years, but it always surprises me. Um, and I think, I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and after the workshop, I felt like I was walking on pink clouds for the rest of the day. It just felt like this is much bigger than me, and the feedback that I'd gotten, there was somebody who was there, I'd never met her before, and she sat at the table and she said, Heather, I'm in a bit of shock and I'm feeling very vulnerable because I've just shared more in this group of people than I have with like my closest best friends. And that's what SoulCollage does for people is that it yes, it opens you up. And I know that can be scary for people, but it's also like, yay, what a relief. I'm being seen and I'm being heard. And we all need to be seen and heard, and I think, yeah, when it's done through pictures, okay, so this is the card that I had lying with me. Um, can you
Love
see
it.
it?
I see a train
It's
and
also got a
a
yeah.
wolf in a black
Mm,
coat. I love that.
yeah. So I actually made this card many years ago, but I never so there are some questions that you ask of your card when you created it.
Okay.
And I hadn't actually answered the questions at the time that I made the card, but I was doing a workshop the other day and I felt like the time was right to answer the questions for this card. Um, are you okay with me sharing that with
Oh my
you?
gosh, yeah. I have no
Okay.
words, and that's very weird
Oh.
for me. I'm like, whoa,
Okay,
this
yeah.
is really cool. I
Yeah.
love the picture. Okay. I'm fascinated.
Okay. All right. So I've called this card. You give your card you give your card a name, and I've called this card chosen. Um, and okay, so the first question is, who are you? I'm going to hold this. You're not going to see my face, but you can look at my card.
Okay.
Um, okay, who are you? I am one who walks in confidence, knowing I have strength far greater than just me. What do you have to give me? I give you courage and heart despite your fear.
Mm.
I give you forward focus. Don't look back.
Oh,
What do you want from me? I want you to keep going with the momentum that is carrying you. Know that you are on the right track. Is there anything else you want to tell me? I also want to tell you, you are safe. Keep living your life in color.
oh, you're the wolf.
Okay, so the wolf, I know you've asked about the wolf. And the wolf has shown up in many of my soul collage cards. But the story of the wolf is that when I was in hospital and really not with it very much, I think I was on a lot of medication. I'd obviously had this head injury, but I was awake. But I would lie in bed and I would look out my window, and I would see this little boy, and there was this wolf that would come and meet the little boy, and they would play under the trees. And I used to talk to people about the wolf, and I used to tell them that I was seeing this wolf, and he was a friendly wolf, and that him and the little boy just played so beautifully together. Um, and and that's where the wolf has come from for me. It was probably a hallucination or a whatever it was. It was very real for me in hospital, and I think it's always just given me a sense of safety, and protection. And but also the thing about wolves is that they're part of a pack.
Yeah.
And I think that's been very fundamental to my journey is that I haven't done any of this on my own. I've been so surrounded, and I do feel like that is so much what's carried me and got me to where I am today. So yeah, that's my story of the wolf.
I love, just to go back to your picture, when you were answering your questions, it was hitting me because the wolf had color and it
Yes.
felt like you were the wolf. And here was this big, scary train gonna come and get you. And
Mm,
it was like, you've got this cape on, just keep going. You're
mm,
going. And That's phenomenal. Now, I've seen on your website, um, like people all together making these collages and putting
Mm.
it in. I'm dyslexic, and when I worked in a women's shelter, there was a lady who was badly beaten and she had head injury. But no matter how
Okay.
much we talked or we wrote, and so then I used pictures because with being
Yeah.
dyslexic, I find it very hard to read a book fully. Even though I'm a writer,
Mm.
I have amazing editors, but um, I used pictures and she was able to understand then what was expected, right?
Yeah.
Love this because in grief, it's kind of the same thing. Like everything just kind of shuts and you're like, what do I do now? Like
Mm.
how do I move forward? And to be able to be in a group and put something together and then be able to show and ask questions, I think that's
Mm.
where it takes it one level farther. It isn't just a vision board now.
No,
This
no.
is something that's speaking to you so much and
Yeah.
it's so deep. So
Yeah.
did you go to school then? Is that what happened? Did you decide to get certified in this or take lessons in
So
this?
yes, so my psychologist, my yeah, the doctor at the time, she said to me, Heather, is this something that you could see yourself doing with other people? And I went, yes, absolutely. I would love that. And I went to Cape Town. They were offering training and yeah, a facilitation course. Um, and so I went and did the training, and that was in 2018. And I became a SoulCollage facilitator then. Still not knowing how it was all going to fit in and work out, but it's been such a phenomenal, yeah, part of my own journey and such a great tool to be able to use with other people. It's really yeah, very, very special.
Wow, that's so great. And so now you offer this to people. Like people can do this and you're a grief coach and holy shit. That's all I can say. I don't, I really, for the first time, speechless in the sense that this has been one heck of a journey for you. And
Yeah.
how are you now? Like, and I know at the end we'll tell people about your website and what you offer and things, but through all of this, like, where do you sit now? Are we out of a wheelchair? Can we walk? Can we, like, what's life?
Yeah, look, I'm up, I'm up.
I'm a
Yes.
real girl now, like Pinocchio.
No, yeah, I've been out of a wheelchair for a really long time, which is
Yeah,
yeah, been amazing. And yeah, I think where I am now is I look back and I mean I know my card says don't look back, but for me to look back is to just marvel, and to just go,
yeah,
it's not only a miracle that I survived that accident, it's a miracle that I'm living the life that I am today. And
yeah,
listen, it hasn't been, there's been
yeah,
lots along the way, but
yeah.
um, but I think that I talk about significant people that I've interacted with, and a conversation that I had, it was with somebody who lives in Australia. I've never met her in real life, yeah, real life, but she was also in the grief world, and I remember her saying to me, she taught me the lesson that everybody's grief is completely unique to them. Because I think that there was this niggle in the back of my mind for a long time going, I haven't done this right, or actually I'm too okay. I shouldn't be this okay. I had this idea that if you lose your child, or if you lose your daughter, that's it. You don't ever get up from that.
Yeah.
And actually, my experience has been the opposite of that. It's been, no, no, yes, I've lost my daughter, but I haven't lost Jess. Like Jess is so much still part of my journey. And um I feel like if I was still stuck in this heap of just perpetual sadness,
Yeah.
how am I honoring Jess, and how am I, like, Jess was 8 years old, but she somehow, her and Clint actually, they they really knew how to live life, and they really knew how to love with all of themselves. And that is a gift that I feel I need to carry, and I need to pass on, and I need to still keep living. Um, yes, I will always carry them with me, but I do that by honoring them, by,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a lot of joy in my life, and I have no shame around that. I'm allowed to be okay. And and I know that Jason and Clint would want that for me. They would want me to experience great love and great life, and I do.
And I think
Yeah,
one of the biggest things that I've heard you say is this is all a choice. This is a choice to move forward with acceptance and healing. And
mm,
I think that that is the biggest hurdle in grief, to understand that it's a choice to heal. We
yeah,
sometimes get so in that pile of emotions and sadness that we don't realize that we have a choice.
yeah,
We think it's all over. And
yeah,
it's like you do have a choice. And
mhm,
and to be honest, I've seen all of this, and I think the only choice you really have is to grow, to go up. Like
yeah,
you can stay in the pail and you can go farther down,
mhm,
but if you start with that choice, like it's a choice to heal, it's a choice to accept this, the
mm,
only place to go is up.
yeah,
And that's when things start to grow in different directions, and you start to see things differently because your whole world is different. The whole
yeah,
perspective is gone. Whatever
yeah.
you saw before no longer exists. And it's like you're looking at people going, do they get it? They don't get it. They're not there. They're
And they
still
don't
they're
get
still
it.
worrying about stuff in life that I totally like am not worried about, right?
Yeah.
And I think that sticks with you for life. Like I laugh when people always say to me, "What are you eating for dinner?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. But what are you gonna eat at?" And I'm like, "It's the last thing on my mind." Like, what all I think to answer that is, "Well, I hope I'm alive at 5 o'clock to eat dinner." Right? And
Yeah.
they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm not that, because I realize that this moment is where I should be. And I don't want to think about eating at 5 o'clock. I want to enjoy where I'm at right now. But you have to learn that that's a choice. So it is like your story is amazing. It is such resilience. It's so inspiring. It inspires me to just keep moving and going. This is a choice. Everything
Mhm.
is a choice. And just realizing that is huge. It's a huge shift in the brain.
Yeah, I think it applies so much to grief, to loss as well, because I think so much of our loss is not a choice. It's something we've got no control over.
Nothing.
I had no I had no control. I had no choice in the fact that I crashed into a car on my
Yep.
way home from a weekend. There was no choice involved in that, but it's recognizing and holding that and going, there was no choice there, but
Yeah.
the rest of my life I get to make choices, and I get to get up and show up and dress up and keep living. And yeah, that is a choice
Oh,
that we do.
that is
Yeah,
such a profound, because that's exactly what my listeners will throw back at me and go, well, I didn't have a choice for someone to die. You
yeah,
didn't, but now you
yeah,
have a choice to heal or not. It's
yeah,
like the control was taken away from you. And you never even realized prior to this death that you had the opportunity for choice too, and that,
mm,
how life was. But now you are given that opportunity to go, well, now you have a choice to heal or not to heal, or
yeah.
to grow or not to grow, right? Because healing can take, I still think I'm healing, right? I think it's
We are.
ever
Yeah.
evolving. So if people wanted to work with you and learn more about this, what's your website? What's your website that
Okay, so my website is www.heatherreen.com. So my name and surname.com.
ever
And yeah.
I'm going to put that in our notes. So
Cool.
heatherreen.com so people will be able to.
Heatherreen.com. And I'm on Facebook and I'm as Heather Reen Grief Coach. And I'm on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn. That's where you and I connected, which
Yeah.
I'll always be grateful for. Um, yeah, and yeah, I think when it comes to coaching, it's my philosophy, and I suppose what I've realized has worked for me in my own journey is that everybody's journey is completely unique, and it's about giving yourself permission to go about this thing called grief in whatever way works for you. Yes, there are models and there are apparently stages and whatever not, but yeah, I believe that it's really about kind of connecting within and going, okay, I'm going to give myself what I need through this journey, and realizing that you don't have to do that on your own. Um, yeah, is massive and important. You don't have to. We don't heal in isolation. That's also been my realization. Is that I yeah, I've said it before. I would never be where I am if I had tried to do it all on my own. I couldn't.
Oh, that's and I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story so openly and with great vulnerability. It's amazing. You're a beautiful human being. And as usual, I close all my podcasts with it is only together that we grieve, and it is only together that we
That
heal.
we heal. I love that.
And I really believe that. I don't
Yeah.
believe grieving is something you do alone. It
Mm.
just isn't. You don't do it in isolation. You do it together. And that's what makes Soul Collage so amazing. Um, you can do this together, you can do it alone, but just creating that collage to me is it feels like you're bringing things together. And
Mm.
and that's what we need in grief. That is exactly what we need. So thank you so much for coming on. Amazing human being. And I'm going to make sure that all of her links and social media are in the write up for this episode. But thank you for tuning in. And as usual, it is only together that we grieve, and it is only together that we heal. Take care, everybody. Bye. Grief Uprooted professional grief and empowerment coaching are not to be used as a substitute for professional advice by legal, medical, financial, business, spiritual, or other qualified professionals. All our products and services are designed for grief empowerment through learning and sharing of one's lived experiences.